What if a brand trapped in a feature and price race could capture 300 new retail spots in a year? Christian Helms turned that fantasy into reality. After the clarity driven rebrand, he sliced sales cycles by 25%, lifted online conversations by 32%, and broadened the brand into two new regions while boosting margin. The transformation began with deep discovery and ended with a single clear positioning that resonated emotionally at every touchpoint. And Christian is here to tell us exactly how he did it. I'm Ash, and this is the Founders Podcast. We skip the fluff and dive straight into the high stakes stories and proven strategies of the world's most successful builders. If you want the raw breakdown of how brands are built, scaled, and sustained, you are in the right place. Christian, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ash.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Austin, Texas.
Great stuff. Christian, before we start, do you have a favorite quote, something that motivates you, inspires you, you would like to share with our audience?
Oh man, there are plenty. One that I've been going back to a lot lately is a Mary Oliver quote. She's a poet, and it's simple. It's just keep some room in your heart for the unimaginable. I really love that.
Interesting. Yeah, gives you a food for thought, basically. Nice one. So, Christian, 28% of our listeners are the people who have sort of raised their first round of investment from friends and family, or they're seeking towards the next round, but they're struggling towards getting more eyeballs, getting more structured, getting more productive into their startups. The remaining, I don't know exact percentage how it is divided in terms of demography, languages, and which stages they are in their startup journey. But what I know is people are curious to understand how to have clarity around their storytelling and, shape their vision. Imagine you are in a room full of founders, right? They're eagerly waiting for you. You walk into the room, you get on the stage, the spotlight is on you, the mic is in your hand. What would you tell them as your story so that they can listen to it and say, "Oh, I'm going to stick in this room as long as I could"?
Yeah. Well, I think first off, touching on the note you made about building brands that have a real emotional connection, it's vital these days. People don't buy your product, they buy your why, right? They buy your brand, they buy your point of view. And it's been shown over time that you can put two identical products on the shelf and the one with a more resonant brand will be bought more often. It's just human nature. And you do that in a lot of ways, but one of the things that I always come back to is just thinking about transcending the functional benefits of a product and getting into the emotional and the social benefits. So, how it makes me feel about myself to be aligned with brand X, or what it says about me to other people that I am a so and so consumer. That can be really powerful if harnessed in a human, genuine, authentic way.
Interesting. And would you be able to share that story where you mentioned about when we were talking on our intro call and you mentioned about how you helped out the business to acquire hundreds of different customers within a very short period of time? Is that okay for you to share that story?
Absolutely. We've
Yeah.
done it a number of times, and it's a little different every time. Most recently, we worked with a brand called Big Rock Brewery in Calgary, and they were in a tough spot as a business. They were kind of one of the early Canadian pioneers of craft beer back in the 80s and rode that wave and had huge support and huge fans for years, but it had just gotten stale and cold, and the brand was kind of on life support, and it showed in sales. And we were able to come in and through research, strategy, storytelling, visual identity, packaging, obviously, bolster that brand. And their sales rose 47% the quarter after that was launched. That's fantastic. Those are the kind of stats we love to keep.
Yeah.
I know.
I would love to have that.
I know. I wish I could do it myself.
Great stuff. Tell me more, Christian, about if you have a golden nugget somewhere in your magical box. Tell me about the time when storytelling generally changed the trajectory of business you've been helping out. What happened and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I think we have a small brewery client that we've partnered with for years here called Austin Beer Works. And we were able to build a narrative around that brand that really created a community of fans and folks who felt like the brand was theirs as much as it was the brewery's. And that just extended to all of these different touch points that you might not expect. One of my favorites, we were asked to help them introduce a beer that was light and sessionable,
Hmm.
to drink, not too harsh on the palate. And our first recommendation was to call it Anytime Ale because it kind of tells you how to use the product, right? Oh, I can drink this anytime. Like it's not
Anytime.
a big bruiser IPA that I have to work to get through. It's easy. Then some lateral thinking from there says if you're doing an anytime ale, there are a lot of anytimes in a day, so we need a multi-pack, right?
Mm.
An 18, a 12, a 36, whatever the deal is. Well, we just kept dialing that up and up and up until we got to the 99 pack,
Mm.
which was a real thing that rolled out into stores and made international news for this tiny little brewery in Austin. It was one of the wildest things I've ever seen. It was on Good Morning America, the Today Show, Comedy Central, just it was everywhere. And
What was the messaging in the PR?
it was
What was this?
basically the package was, 7.5, 8 feet long, weighed like 85 pounds.
Mm.
It was covered with all of these anytime occasions that were kind of
Mm.
funny and witty to highlight all the different reasons and moments that
Mm.
you could enjoy one of them, and people just went wild for it.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, it's always about like how you put your messaging out there, right? Do you have any hidden gems specifically around software as a service or a digital product or similar kind of business you have helped in the past?
Yeah, we've done a bit of that. It's usually more a part of the integrated branding we're doing for something larger. So it's seldom just
Mm.
that as a standalone product. But
Mm.
really, each of these different media follow a similar set of rules, which we hold ourselves really accountable to, which is create something of value, create something that brings value to people's lives. And then the other
Mm.
side of that coin is build something that really drives results for our partners. If you can do something to inspire or delight or educate folks in that platform, they're going to see it as much more valuable.
Interesting. Interesting. So Christian, you speak about clarity and vision, right? Was there ever a time in your commercial life where when being too much clear too early actually limited your clients or your growth? The reason I'm asking that
Yeah.
is because um, we do monthly events here in London for startups. So they come here and then they pitch theirs. We have like 45 seconds for each. And what we have learned is um, back in 2024 and 2025, if you just put AI in your startup's name, people were just throwing money at you, right? If you just say, "Oh, we are a like Austin brewery company," right? But we manufacture our beer with AI. That's it. You get like funds into your bank next week or something, right? And then slowly, what happened is towards the middle of 2025, I started speaking with my friends and VCs here locally, and they said that um, there's a lot of AI companies who are building different LLM models. AI is everywhere. We utilize them on every day. But we are not investing anymore in any kind of companies who are building this LLM model. And the reason why they are doing it because these big giants, Nvidia, Microsoft, Google, they have so many resources, talented people, and capacity to literally overtake your whole business within a couple of days. Let's say you have an LLM model you have created specifically for storytelling, right? And you have trained that model from last 15 years of client engagement, analysis, and data and everything. And that is very good with storytelling or creating messaging. But what is stopping these big giants to do the same? Because they also have access to the data. And if they don't, they will figure it out
Right.
how get into your data set and do it like. And they started investing into the application layer now. So the VCs in the tech world now, they prominently look at the companies who utilize AI in some form, but they don't just invest into the company if they're only creating a different LLM model
Mhm,
based on asset access they have. What they're investing is on the layer of application built on top of it,
mm,
right? So clarifying that at a very early stage gets the startups in a big trouble, because application layer is something which is very easy to make right now because of the AI itself. So it's a catch 20 to kind of situation. I was just wondering, is this something similar you faced in your life? And what's the advice you would give to our listeners based on this?
Absolutely. It's happened many times. And in building brands, to be honest, clarity is something I try to hold at bay for as long as possible in the process. Because if you, from the minute you start, are clear what this thing should be, you're probably going to an answer that's common or been done before or sort of surface level. So I work really hard to dig in and not have an idea of where we're going in the beginning and let it organically happen between us and the client as we learn more through research and stakeholder interviews and all those things. And to be honest, it's a lot more fun that way. There's so much
Hmm.
more discovery. When you're a young creative, you want to listen as little as possible, go away, do what you want to do, and then try to get people to love it and approve it. And as you get older in this industry, it's the uncertainty and the discovery and the process as much as the end product that you really start to fall in love with. Another place that I think clarity can kind of spin you in the wrong direction is if it leads to very linear thinking. Um, A leads to B leads to C. If you are thinking linearly, you end up with a tech brand like IBM,
Hmm.
International Business Machines, right? Like it describes what it is, but it's not exactly creative or sexy. If you think laterally, then it's not A to B to C, it's Apple leads to banana leads to cantaloupe. Well, apples, that's interesting, right? What if our logo and our name was a fruit, even though we're a
Hmm.
technology company? How does that apply to our strategic framing? And that's how you get a brand like Apple. Much more
Hmm.
emotionally resonant, much more exciting, much sexier.
Yeah, yeah. What are the strategies? Do you help your customers coming up with branding artifacts, or even brand itself with like namings, logos, and things like that? Is that something comes under
Absolutely.
your
Yeah, just
you do?
about every touch point of the brand we build,
Hmm.
from naming, strategy, sometimes even product creation. We'll collaborate on that.
What are the key things you look at? So let's say, for example, if one of the listeners of Founders Podcast is on the stage where they are looking for a branding partner, and mostly, the listeners are from the tech world. So either they're creating some kind of tech product or tech services. What are the key stages you take your clients through to understand, to analyze their current positioning, and then advise them on creating a brand or name, or even registering a domain or something like that?
Absolutely. So we dig into all of those pieces, any existing positioning, any existing marketing, any existing, functional language that lives as part of the brand as it stands now. And what we're looking for are a few different things. One, we're looking for those little sparks or quirks or features or ideas that are different and unique to what they do. We really want to surface those and build the brands around the things that make them special.
Hmm.
Another thing we're really looking for are disconnects. We're looking for breaks in the brand where we feel that we are this, but it is not coming across to the consumer that you are that at all.
Mm.
It's not enough just to have an internal understanding of what you're all about. It has to be shared in a meaningful way for the brand to stay whole.
Got it. Got it. I have been doing a little bit of research, and I found out you have helped a coffee business also in the past, right?
We've had a few coffee businesses. We did a huge national rebrand for Chameleon Cold Brew
Hmm.
years ago, and then we've had some other smaller coffee clients over time as well.
Which is the most memorable story?
Honestly, it's a very small pro bono project we just wrapped,
Hmm.
and it's a coffee brand called Cuvée. based here in Austin. The founder is a former military operator and over time has been very active in helping figure out the PTSD issues that so many of our armed service members come back with. Fortunately, Texas has sort of championed and led the way along the lines of psychotherapy and hallucinogenic therapy to essentially heal that PTSD, and the numbers are insane. So, Cuvée decided they were going to build a sub brand, a line of coffee where the proceeds would go to help those veterans with PTSD. And we just finished up that project, and it just means a ton to me. The minute I heard about it, I told Mike, the founder, we're in. Like, you're not paying us for this. We want
Yeah. Excuse me.
all good.
Great. Okay. So that's interesting. So, Christian, we often celebrate resilience in our founder space. I mean, I know it is required in many other industries. I think all of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
Looking back, was there a moment when you pushing? Excuse me. I think I have to silent it. Sorry. Was there a moment when you pushing through was actually um, a wrong decision? And the reason I'm asking it is because I want my listeners to learn from experts like you what sort of wrong decisions could be catastrophic in their founder's journey, and what are the early red flags they should be looking for before making that mistake, and how they can stop themselves from themselves.
Yeah. I think overconfident confidence or over optimism can be dangerous. As
Mm-hmm.
a founder with a new venture, you have to have some of that. You absolutely have to believe that you can succeed in a space where most folks are going to tell you you're not going to. So
Mm-hmm.
that's important. But being overconfident or overly cocky about how important you are, I think limits the opportunity to stay scrappy and hungry and fight for that next rung on the ladder. The longer you can hold onto that fire, the more powerful you're going to be as a leader of a brand.
Any strategies or any kind of tips you have for the founders to keep that in mind all the time, to keep yourself in check?
Have people around that will argue with you. Have people around
Yeah.
that will tell you no or show you a better way, and be selfless enough to recognize that and trust it and
Mm.
feel empowered by surrounding yourself with people who may know things that you don't. It
Mm.
sounds obvious and it's hugely beneficial, but a lot of folks have trouble getting over that hurdle. I'm
Mm.
fortunate to have absolutely brilliant folks on our team who are all better than me at the thing that they're great at. And I absolutely love it. It's a ton of fun.
Great stuff. So, Christian, this is a little bit of a more sort of like a directional question. If your younger self met you today and that younger self is asking you, so imagine this: I have some cousin brothers and sisters who are about to get out of the universities and they're in premier universities right now, right? So I was thinking when they got in there that their future is like set because,
Right.
imagine if you're getting in Cambridge or Oxford, you would feel that once you're graduated, you are sorted, right? But that's not the case right now. What I'm hearing in the industry, I mean, like Microsoft and Tesla has visited Oxford multiple times for recruitment, but they cannot pick the number of candidates they used to pick in our times from the university. They're picking very less number. They're giving this like industry standard packages to them, but they're still picking less number of candidates compared to what they used to do back in our
Mhm.
days. What would you advise younger Christian to focus on in terms of building the career? And the career could be in either direction, to do work for somebody else or to start your own business.
I think first I would open my young eyes to the fact that this was even something you could do for a living.
Mm.
I grew up, I mean, this is small town in North Carolina, pre-internet, no exposure to brand other than, a Doritos package you get at the convenience store. That doesn't look like it was built by a person. I didn't even make that connection. It just looks like it got spit out of a machine somewhere. So
Yeah.
I had no idea you could do this for a living until the very end of college. I sort of found it, and it was an absolute epiphany where it was like, this is it. It combines aesthetics and language and all of these things I'm really passionate about. in one field. The second epiphany was I have no skill set whatsoever. So I had to go to graduate school to essentially learn the thing that I wanted to do. I'd been a journalism major
Mm,
and was getting pretty close to sort of a quarter life crisis where I thought, what am I going to do when I get out of school? I don't know that I can do something that I don't love. And luckily, I found it. The other piece of advice I'd give myself, and lucky enough, I followed it unknowingly, is your first job out of school can really define your career trajectory. I was fortunate that my first job out of school was with an agency called Pentagram, which is an amazing agency in New York and around the globe. And it put me in front of folks and taught me things that are still valuable today.
mm,
If you take the less exciting, easier job that pays a little bit better over the job that's going to push you and challenge you and force you to grow, that puts you on a path where your next job is going to be similar to that, doing similar sort of work. It's ridiculous, but people hire you for what you do. So if they
mm.
see that you have done something, they will give you opportunities to do it more. But nobody's going to grab a young brand person who's working designing greeting cards at Hallmark and pull them into an international rebrand. It's
Yeah.
a tough stretch.
Interesting. And did you started the business right after your first job, or was there more like, did you work for other people also?
Yeah, no, I worked at Pentagram for a good while, got burned out on just New York, period,
Mm,
moved down to Austin and was lucky enough to get a job at an agency called McGarrah Jesse that does absolutely wonderful brand and advertising work. Um,
mm,
just an absolutely fantastic, group of people and agency.
mm,
At the same time, I was doing a lot of freelance design and brand work in the music industry. I grew up as a, Chapel Hill indie rock kid, and I was going to shows 4 or 5 nights a week, so I figured why not just get folks to pay me to be there? So I was designing packaging and merchandise and promotional stuff and stage backdrops and all these different things for all
mm,
these bands that I love, Wilco, Modest Mouse, Spoon, The National,
mm,
all these really wonderful bands, and that essentially kept coming, and it got to a breaking point where I was gonna have to choose between the 2, and it was an easy choice to kinda move laterally into working for myself, and then that became myself plus, a contract helper or 2, eventually full-time employees, more of a tradition into more traditional brand work rather than the music industry because you can't make money in the music industry anymore. It's gone, unfortunately, unless
mm.
you're touring, and just grew organically from there over the past 16 years into a group of 16 people. So there's some nice symmetry there.
Interesting. And that is exactly what I was about to ask you. Like, you are still in the talks with your 16 years old, right? So that person has gone through wonderful agency jobs. That person has learned how to do the branding and everything. Now, this person is thinking, oh, I could build something of my own, like a business, right? What would you advise to the young Christian around what things to make sure you sort out before actually hitting the milestone of starting a business itself? Like, there must be something which you think I could have done better, right?
Yeah. I mean, I should have taken business classes in college instead of
Mm,
tons of writing and art classes, right?
mm,
I made fun of my friends who were in business school about how lame it was and yada, yada, yada. But I then had to basically give myself an education as I started
mm.
my own company and read every book I could imagine on business just to figure out how to get this thing to function and spin like a top. So yeah, I should have taken one for the team and had a few business classes in college. It would have saved me some time.
Do you think that founders should actively design their legacy, or does it just emerges organically?
I think it's both. I think it absolutely does happen organically.
Mm,
But, you can either create a brand for yourself or people will create it for you.
mm,
There's no option to not have one. So founders who have a clear vision, and a clear purpose help to sort of fulfill that prophecy in everything that they do. Folks who are just, searching for growth without any real content or value, it gets a lot more muddled.
indeed, indeed. So, Christian, we are surrounded by AI, and AI is everywhere, right? So, my next question is around that. Sort of like, what part of your work do you think will outlast you, and what part probably will not, considering AI is everywhere? Like, I don't know how many of your clients actually think that they can utilize AI for messaging and branding. I'm guessing a lot, or maybe I'm totally bonkers here because I don't know how that industry works. What's your opinion on that? And how do you think the industry is shaping?
Absolutely. As a side note to that, we just won a huge project because in the pitch, all the other agencies used AI to create the work and we actually did the work. So that was
Mhm.
encouraging because the stuff looked pretty slick, to be honest, but you could still tell. And the lack of hands on effort there, I think, played well in our favor. That said, my industry is a really unique one for the AI conversation. One, because like you said, there are a lot of people, potential clients out there who think, well, I can just use AI to create my brand and my messaging. I don't need a skilled, educated partner. Unfortunately, at least as it stands now, the language learning models, et cetera, are essentially an amalgamation of all the things that are already out there. So you're not going to create liquid death by using AI, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not out there yet. It's something new and different with a unique point of view. And
Mhm.
it's ridiculous, but it absolutely worked. You're never going to get there with AI. AI is going to be very linear in the way it thinks, not lateral like we talked about earlier. And it's great for some things. It's great for a lot of things. But if your goal, as it should be in an industry, is to stand out and be different, that's the wrong way to go.
Mm.
It literally is a summation of everything that already exists, and people are bored with that.
That's interesting. And have you ever thought that, if you, I don't know how your board of members is structured, but if you were forced to step away next year, let's say, right? Imaginary situation. What unfinished work would you think trouble you most?
It's probably just the education I'm able to give clients on
Mm.
brands and how they work and how to make smart decisions with your business that dovetails with your brand. It's really part of the thing that I just enjoy the most now is just that education aspect. I'm doing more and more writing. I'm actually working on a book around brand. I've done so much writing on the subject and I want to take all those little nuggets of wisdom I've learned and gathered over the years and put them all in one place so that clients can benefit from them. Being of service is a good feeling.
Great stuff. Cool. I mean, in the next part of our interview, I've got six quick fire questions for you. But before
Great.
we get in there, I have a couple of questions. Could you give us the sense of the size of the business? Where are you in terms of revenue, number of customers, size of team, etc.?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're a team of 16 folks, and generally about 3.5 million a year in revenue. And it's a wide variety of clients from small startups like Austin Beer Works that I mentioned to big brands like Disney and Harley Davidson, MTV, Hershey, Jack Daniels. So it's an interesting mix.
And one more question, which is close to my heart personally. I ask this to all of my guests. Throughout your journey and experience, and there must have been some valuable lessons learned, right? If you had don't mind sharing, could you reflect on your experiences and tell us about one mistake or a setback that you have encountered along the way that you now consider maybe not a regret, it's a lesson learned in life? And then additionally, what advice would you give our listeners based on this experience?
I think a mistake that I'm sure I've made over the years early on, and you see a lot in the industry, is the mistake of hiring an absolute rock star designer who's
Mm,
a terrible culture fit, a terrible collaborator. It really, I'm fortunate to have this team of, no ego, collaborative, supportive, just really aspirational designers and writers and developers who work together. And it's easy to see the shiny glitz of a young rock star designer and get taken in by that because you want that level of work. But the problem is if they're a terrible culture fit and they're a toxic person, it's going to have a lot
mm,
more problems. And so over the years, the number of times I've hired the second or third best in terms of just skill set is high because I can teach you to be a good designer. I can make you better there, but I can't teach you to be a good person. Like that ship
person.
has sailed at this point. So hire absolutely exceptional human beings and then they will rise to the occasion.
Great stuff. Cool. Well, Christian, I think we have reached to the point where we can go through our six quick fire questions. At any point, if you think you don't want to answer any of this question, just give me a skip and I'll move over to the
Okay.
next. Yeah, sounds good. All right. Question number one. What are the top three strategies for small and medium sized businesses to make sure their messaging around the branding keeps intact and to the point in 2026?
Speak to people like they're people. not
Mm,
consumers, not demographics. Speak to people in a human and authentic way. That's number one. Two, find the things that make you unique or different and build your brand around those, the things that are special to you, the things that cause you to stand out. And then three, and this is kind of a weird one, but don't overcomplicate the brand process with a lot of lingo and terminology and yada, yada, yada. Explain the brand process and what needs to happen in the simplest language you can. Don't try to show someone how smart you are. Show them how valuable you are and how you can help them.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. People overlook on these strategies so much because while you were explaining these, I was going through my head with the examples. I've seen it in real world around the people making this mistake. Great. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
Oh man, Paul Acker wrote kind of a seminal book, I think in the '60s around brand, and that really is kind of the one of the early definitions of brands and how they work. There's another guy that I absolutely love. I'm going to grab one of his books here. This guy Marty Neumeier. Read anything that Marty Neumeier writes about brands. This is the Brand Gap. There's another one called Zag that's fantastic. A lot of my thinking around brand started with Marty Neumeier and the books that he's written. Also, a lot more enjoyable and less dry than the Paul Acker books. So maybe start here.
Yeah. Okay. Great stuff. What one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Empathy, collaboration, being humble,
Mm,
building something for everyone versus just for yourself. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
Man, personal, probably exercise. You're so much more centered and calm and open and ready when you've done something really difficult at the beginning of the day. I think that for me is great. Another piece that's odd, kind of an odd development recently, we have a client who makes performance nicotine pouches for athletes and entrepreneurs and kind of high functioning individuals. And it's been fun to play around with that as a hack a little bit too. Rick Rubin's a huge fan of it. Joe Rogan's a huge fan of it. And it does have some interesting positives in terms of mental acuity and physical performance. It also helps fight Alzheimer's and all kinds of brain decay over time. So it's interesting being a kid that grew up in North Carolina, nicotine was evil. It's
Mm,
absolutely, it's the worst. And North Carolina is one of the worst states for it. And the fact that now it's seen as a potential biohack performance tool is just really interesting to me. So that's been fun to kind
mm,
of play around with. And it's been a fun brand to build with them as well.
great. Well, I can read about it at least.
Yeah.
What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. It would probably be some kind of consumer packaged good, and it would probably be something that I naturally gravitate towards, and that might be hot sauce or that might be beef jerky. Two terrible categories to get into, by the way. Do not try to compete in either of those categories. But the next thing I build, I want it to be really closely aligned again with something I love. So I'll have to
Mm,
think about that a little bit.
oh, thinking about it, and it will give you a little bit of food for thought. So, not bad, right? Last but not least, what's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
I got a few. Flew a Red Bull Flugtag plane off a 30-foot
Mm,
ramp into the water and didn't die. I
mm,
spent a day in my backyard with Anthony Bourdain filming his show and shotgunning beers and getting tattoos. Those are two. Yeah, those are two good ones.
great stuff. Great stuff. Christian, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story and packing some wisdom golden nuggets. If people want to check out your website, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do it?
Absolutely. Helmsworkshop.com is our web address. And then, of course, we're on LinkedIn and Instagram and all those fun things as well.
Christian, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing. It's been
Thank
an
you.
absolute pleasure having you on Farmers Podcast.
I enjoyed it as well. Thank you.